Alrighty, so part two of this talk, taking those ideas about science and about the production of knowledge and those kinds of things. Another idea that I want you to bear in mind here really is, again, just some critical thinking skills, right? If, as I said before, if you make a fantastic claim, you need fantastic evidence. And the ownership, if you're making a claim, on proving it is up to you. It's not everybody else's job to disprove you, right? And so thinking about that, thinking about, these scientific principles like Occam's razor, which you've probably heard of before, like the simplest answer is usually true, right? If I tell you that I can fly like Superman, the simplest answer is probably that I'm making it up, and I am, right? And so, in all of these things, right, you find a strange mark out in your yard. What's more likely, that a armadillo was digging in your yard last night, or that aliens landed while you were sleeping? Come on, right? So let's apply this to some archaeology, right, our topic. And so one of the best examples of this is absolutely the show Ancient Aliens. Ancient Aliens, if you're not familiar with it, is a show on the History Channel. I think it's on Netflix as well now, too. But it is a show that makes the claim that in ancient times, thousands or maybe even millions of years ago, extraterrestrial aliens from another planet came to Earth and taught humans how to build pyramids and farm and basically all of these things. What they're really addressing is kind of what we had talked about before, which is often called the Great Leap Forward, that for a very, very long time, humans were kind of living like our evolutionary ancestors. We're living in the forest, we didn't make much in the way of tools, we didn't do this and that, and then all of a sudden, we have this really complex culture, complex tools, we start farming and building cities and all this stuff. Well, one of the mistakes of this is that there isn't a great leap forward, frankly. If you look at our history, it looks like a great leap because you're talking about a huge span of time. But the truth is, all of these things took thousands of years to slowly develop, right? That it just didn't happen overnight, But the History Channel has this show, Ancient Aliens, and they say, nope, just like that, humans just turned on a dime. They just totally changed, which would make sense if it was aliens, right? We're living in caves, beating each other in the face with rocks and don't know jack, right? And then all of a sudden we live in cities and have agriculture and domestication and pottery and all this stuff. Well, okay, if it was an overnight change, I imagine it would be an outside influence, right? It could have been aliens that landed, except that, again, that's not what we see, right? If you ignore the archaeological record, then that's what you find, but it isn't. And I'm going to walk you through some of that. Just a couple of examples, right? And actually, Ancient Aliens, the meme here is actually this guy that's always on the show who does not have a background in archaeology. None of them do. None of them are trained as archaeologists. None of them are trained as anthropologists. None of them have ever done research. None of them have degrees in this. None of them have published. None of them in peer-reviewed journal articles. None of the guys I'm going to talk about today have ever done anything that is recognized by anybody. Right? They're self-styled experts. There's no outside group that said, yeah, this person's ideas, whether it be a master's committee, a PhD committee, a dissertation committee, a hiring committee, peer-reviewed journal articles, whatever. Nobody has ever done anything with those that we're talking about today, right? So right off the bat, we have a problem here. These guys are claiming that they can fly like Superman, right? So where is it, right? So this guy's on there, and he's always saying, he's always kind of couching it. It's like, oh, how did they build the pyramids? And they only had, basic tools. I'm not saying it was aliens, but, well, we know how they built the pyramids. We know how they built Stonehenge. We've been able to replicate these things. We find their tools, right? The quarries where the pyramids were, the blocks for the pyramids in Egypt were cut, we found them, and we found tools there that and then we're looking at the tools and went, oh, okay, these are the tools that they did it, and this is how they did it. We found the quarry where they took the stones for Stonehenge, right? And we know how they did it. The Incan stonework, which is really complicated and beautiful, we know from the historic record, Spanish conquistadors and stuff talking about how those things were built and seeing people make them, right? We have the evidence for this, right? But you have to have some background in scholarship to know where to look for these facts, right? But what's funny about Ancient Aliens is it's not even original. It's kind of a ripoff of several different authors, Graham Hancock being one of them that I'll talk about soon. Another is Eric von Danigan. He's probably one of the first. Eric von Danigan, back in like the 60s and 70s, wrote a book called Chariots of the Gods, which claimed that ancient aliens had visited Earth and done all those things like I talked about. And so he also claims that our ideas about gods and deities and stuff come from UFOs that we saw, hence the chariots of the gods were actually UFOs and aliens coming down to teach us all of this stuff. You know, he also in some of his work claims that human evolutionary advancement came because extraterrestrials had sex with like proto-human women, like Homo erectus or Homo habilis women, females, that they had sex with them because apparently after being in a starship and traveling millions of light years, the first thing you want to do is have sex with strange animals on a distant planet. I don't know. Also, apparently all of the alien astronauts are males, but but again, I'm laughing about this, but the truth is, okay, fine, that's his claim. We mapped the human genome. And guess what? You and I are 98 point something % identical to a chimpanzee. So where's the alien DNA, right? We're looking at our relationship to Neanderthals and Denisovans and stuff, and we see where we split and where we merge with them, right? So we've mapped the genome, and none of it was alien, none of it was unexpected, none of it came out of nowhere. Again, we talked about evolution and mating, and so how is it that a species from literally a different galaxy or the other side of ours would be capable of producing fertile offspring when, you know, even really closely related species here on Earth can't? It just doesn't make any damn sense, right? Likewise, unfortunately, with, you know, so many of these claims about, oh, aliens did this, aliens did that. All right, cool. Have we found a spaceship? Have we found a laser pistol? Have we found a metal that doesn't exist on Earth? Have we found an element that doesn't exist on Earth? Have we found, writings about them or anything? Have we found a single artifact, even once, that we can't explain? No. Every single thing that we find in these ruins, in these sites, in these archaeological digs, we know what they are. We understand them. And honestly, sometimes these guys will just say, oh, we found this thing and we don't know what it is. Yeah, we do. If you read the scholarship, we know exactly what it is, right? We figure it out, you know. None of this has ever been, you know, completely unknown. I'll also point out that a lot of this work is extremely racist, to be honest with you. It's amazing how these guys are always pointing at non-Europeans and saying, they're not smart enough to do this. They're not smart enough to build pyramids. They don't have the brain capacity to figure out farming and horticulture. There's no way these people could have built plazas and cities. It's like, well, why? And what's funny is they never point at Europeans and say that. They never point at white people and say, white people are too dumb to figure that out. Some aliens had to help them. No, it's always brown people. It's always people outside of Europe that they're like, oh, they were definitely too dumb to know how to do that. Wait, what? Right? The assumption being that these people didn't have the intelligence that you and I have to figure out math and engineering and you know, these kinds of things. Of course they did, right? Europeans, Africans, Native Americans, Southeast Asia, people are people, and we're pretty damn sharp, right? So there's a very kind of racist undercurrent to a lot of this. I got to be honest with you. And you know, so why is this being published? Again, nobody's peer reviewing this stuff. History Channel cares that you're putting eyes on the screen. Eric von Danigan wants to sell books. There's nobody that is fact checking this, right? And you go, well, why would they do this? If you notice, that's the book cover for Chariot of the Gods. You'll notice it says 7 million copy bestseller. If he got $2 a copy, I can give you 14 million reasons why he would like to make up some sensational bullshit, right? Because the truth is, fact is often a lot less sexy. I don't think it's less interesting personally, but I'm a scholar. But to talk about culture and nuance, it takes a lot more than being like aliens, right? And so it can be a slow process. So what I want to talk about now is a couple of the things that we see to demonstrate what I'm trying to drive home about culture change and ideas and their development. And an easy one is really irrigation, right? when we started farming 10 or 12,000 years ago, one of the important things is going to be irrigation, right? If I'm going to plant my crops, I'm going to bust my ass, I'm going to clear this field, I'm going to do all this stuff. I want to make sure that they come in. I also need them to. I'm no longer a nomadic forager following herds of animals, killing them, eating them. I'm staying in one place, but that means that I really need this crop to come in because I got some stores, right? I got a barn over here, but when that food runs out, this food better come in or I starve to death, right? So that's very important, okay? So when we first start farming, of course, we got to water those crops. I'm not just going to hope the rain comes and starve to death. I'm going to water those crops. And so in the archaeological record, the first thing we see is what you see at the top there, a ditch. We just dig a ditch, right? I'm going to plant my field down by the lake, down by the river, down by that pond. And I'm just going to dig a trench, right? And water's going to flow into it and it's going to flow out onto my field. Perfect, right? And then I can cut some side things if I want to. That'll also be the water source for the village, right? And so now we have drinking water, we have our crops watered. Great. That's the first thing we see, and we see that last for a pretty long time, right? That's all they did. Until somebody comes along and says, you know, guys, I have an idea. This ditch is awesome. Well done. But we lose a lot of the water because it soaks into the ground, right? It's soaking into the ground. Plus, we're drinking this, and by the time it gets to us from this trench, it's kind of dirty. It tastes like dirt. It's dark. I don't love it. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'd prefer it if it was a little fresher. You know what we could do? We can take stones and lay them on the bottom of the trench, and that way the dirt doesn't get stirred up so much. So maybe there's less dirt in the water I'm drinking, but also, more importantly, we don't have that water flowing into the ground and more of it will get to our crops. It'll be easier. Everybody goes, that's a great damn idea. That's an improvement. Let's do that. And we see people do that for a very long time, for centuries, millennia. That's what people are doing. Centuries and centuries, people are doing this. Maybe not millennia. Centuries people do this. And then somebody comes along and says, that whole rock on the bottom thing, guys, that was an awesome idea. You know what else we can do? If you look at the picture that my video is partly covering up, you'll see an example of this. People said, you know, if we put rocks on the side, it would do the same thing as those rocks on the bottom. It'd keep the water a little cleaner. If we want to drink it, it's going to make sure more of it doesn't, sort of flow out. It'll get it to our field. And everyone went, that's great. Let's do that. We do that for centuries, right? And with enough time, somebody goes, stones are awesome, but if we make bricks with mortar, then none of the water gets lost. And we could even cover it so that it's not evaporating into the air. The dogs aren't coming over there and taking a poop in our drinking water. Critters don't die and fall in, that kind of stuff, right? And so this top picture, you see the stairs going down into this cistern even, right? We can store water. What happens in the dry season? Well, if we fill that thing up, we'll have water longer because that's a great idea, right? Until eventually we get to this, right? We get to massive aqueducts, right? That can move water incredible distances and in a huge volume that we can say, we're not even going to build our city near water. We'll just move the water to us, right? Now, if aliens showed up and taught us how to do all this, why didn't they show up and just show us this? I mean, after all, they have spaceships. They can travel faster than light, probably. They have incredible technology. Just miles beyond what we have. So why didn't they show us how to do this? How come they started with we want to wean you off, so here's a trench. Now, what we see is exactly what you'd expect to see, which is humans figuring things out slowly over time. Humans putting the pieces together and slowly building up. The example that I give is Henry Ford invents the Model A. The damn thing goes about 20 miles an hour. It breaks down all of the time. I think the wheels were still made out of wood, right? It had spokes on it and stuff like that. Well, then somebody makes the engine a little better, the transmission a little better, the wheels more robust, right? Somebody starts figuring out that the interior should be a little bit nicer. We get seat belts, we get airbags, we get car stereo systems, right? Until ultimately today we have a Tesla. Right? That's what happens. Humans figure something out and then revise it and slowly over time make it better and better and better. There's no great leap forward. There is steps forward. And every day we take another step forward and we refine the things that we have, right? The first computer was the size of my damn house. And today, my laptop fits into a bag and has 100 times the computing power of that, 1,000 times the computing power of that, right? It didn't just show up like this, right? We see that over and over again. So what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about architecture, you want to talk about farming, you want to talk about irrigation, you want to talk about cars, you want to talk about streets, you want to talk about anything that supposedly aliens gave us. Instead, what you see is not aliens showed up and we got it. What we see is that over time, you and I and our ancestors refined these things and made them better, okay?